Hey folks, welcome back to the table. This is the Summoner's Circle podcast. I am your host, Vince. This is Season 2, Episode number 9. Tonight, I wanted to slow things down a bit and talk directly to two kinds of people here today. The first is the person who just picked up Palladium Fantasy 2nd Edition and is trying to figure out what they're looking at. And the second is the person who has had the book for years. Maybe even ran it before, but something just never quite clicked for them in their group. This episode is basically a primer. Not a rules breakdown, not a page-by-page walkthrough. This is about how to think about Palladium Fantasy so the game actually works at the table. Because if you approach this game like a modern system, it's going to fight you. I'm not going to lie. It's going to feel clunky, confusing, and probably some people are going to think it's unfair and dumb. But if you approach it the way it wants to be played, it opens up quite fast for you and runs like a dream. And you're probably saying, yeah, right, Vince. But, so let's start with the most important thing. Palladium Fantasy is not a balanced game. This isn't Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition. This isn't Wizards of the Coast gaming. This isn't, my player agency gaming. And that's not a flaw. That's just how it's designed. You're not expected to take on equal fights. Remember, this game was built during the 80s and 90s when Advanced Dungeons & Dragons were around. These were modeled off Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. It has evolved slightly over the years. It has its own house rules. It's a little bit better in a sense, but when it comes to encounters, you're not expected to win every encounter. You're not expected to stand your ground just because something shows up. You're expected to think. You're expected to avoid danger when it makes sense. You're expected to run when things go bad. You're expected to stack the odds before you commit. If you come in expecting every fight to be fair, the game's going to punish you and you're going to die. That's just the gist of it. If you look at the experience chart system, it rewards you more for thinking and using skills than just using your physical muscles. Once you accept that, the entire system starts to feel better and make more sense to you, because now traveling matters. Distance, supplies, and time matter. You start asking different questions like, I don't know, do we even go this way? Do we have enough to make it there and back? What happens if something goes wrong halfway through? That's Palladium. Now, talking about characters in a sense, one of the first things people notice is how different the classes feel. And I don't mean mechanically, I mean in expectation. A fighter is not just a damage dealer, a wizard is not just a spell list, and a thief is just not a bunch of skill rolls. Each class carries a role in the world, not in just combat. A knight has obligations, a wizard attracts attention, a priest answers to something larger than life. If you ignore that, the game's going to feel flat. Now, if you lean into that, suddenly the world starts reacting to the party in ways that feel real in the game. Here's something that trips a lot of people up. Skills in Palladium are not meant to solve everything. They're there to help, give you an edge, but they don't replace thinking. If a player says, I have a skill for that, that's fine, let them use it. But always ask them, how are you using it? Not just what your percentage is and how it works. Climbing a wall in the rain at night is different than climbing in the daytime. Picking a lock under pressure is different than picking it in a quiet room with all the time in the world. The skill doesn't change, the situation does, and that's where the tension comes from. Combat. Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about combat, because this is where expectations really need to shift. Combat in Palladium is dangerous, not just because enemies hit hard, because fights take time. They drain resources, create openings, and they attract attention. Even if you win, you might be worse off afterward. That's why not every fight should happen. Sometimes the right move is just to avoid it completely. And sometimes the right move is to negotiate. And sometimes it is to walk away and come back later and try a different way. If your group starts thinking about that, the game gets better immediately. Shifting now into something that doesn't get talked about enough, and that's travel. Travel is not filler in Palladium. Travel is the game. The road is where things go wrong. The road is where choices matter. The road is where you find out if the party actually planned anything at all. If you treat travel like a skip button, you're cutting out a huge part of what makes the system work. You don't need constant encounters, you just need to have some uncertainty. Weather turning bad, supplies running low, directions just not lining up to what they know. These are small problems that stack up. And when something bigger happens, the party is already under pressure. That's when the game feels alive. GMs, if you're running Palladium Fantasy for the first time, your job is not to explain everything. Your job is just to present the world honestly. Let players make mistakes, let consequences happen, let situations unfold without fixing them for the players. You don't need to protect the party from the system. You need to let them learn how it works. Because once they do, they start making smarter choices all on their own. And that's when the table shifts. Now something else matters: information. Information is one of the most valuable things in this game. Knowing where something is, knowing where someone works for, knowing what something actually does, that kind of knowledge can change everything, and the system supports that. Rumors matter, maps matter, old stories matter. If your players start chasing information instead of just treasure, you're definitely going to be in a good place. And I'll say this clearly, gold is useful. Magical items, very much useful. But information is what moves the game forward, and that was what opening doors. That's what creates new problem, and that's what keeps sessions from feeling repetitive. Before I go further here, I want to touch on something that usually scares people off: the size of the book. Yeah, it's a large book, it's a lot, but here's the truth. You don't need all of it to start, you just need the basics. How combat works, how skill works, and a rough sense of the world. That's enough. Heck, in 1E Palladium Fantasy, most of the world was just blank. And you just had little paragraphs when we first had that book of each part of the world, and you had to just basically figure it out. And that's great. I love that. But that's all you really need. And you can learn the rest as you go. Trying to master everything before you play is the fastest way to just never start. So don't do that. Start small. Let the system reveal itself over time. That's how it's meant to be learned. Tone now, because this is where a lot of Palladium games either come alive or fall flat. Palladium Fantasy is not a high hero fantasy game. It's not about shiny champions walking into danger knowing they will win. You're not superheroes. It's closer to, I don't know, grounded, dangerous, and uncertainty gaming. You're capable, your characters, you're skilled, but you are not untouchable. Remember, the world is bigger than you. That needs to come through at the table. Towns are not just safe because they're towns. Roads are not just safe because they're normally traveled on. Just because something looks abandoned doesn't mean it's empty. If you keep that tone consistent, players will adjust their behavior and attitude. They start checking things carefully, they start asking probing questions, and they start slowing down. And that's what you want. Now let's talk about a campaign, because this is where people freeze up. You don't need a grand opening with flowers and balloons. You don't need a world map fully detailed. You don't need factions mapped out. You don't need a master villain planned from session 1. You just need a starting point. Road, job, problem, that's it. Start the party already in motion. They're traveling somewhere, they're escorting something, they've been hired for a task. Give them a direction and then put something in the way. That's your first session. Boom, right there. From there, build outwards based on what happens, not what you planned. Now, here's something that helps a lot too. Keep your first few sessions small in scope, like one location as a central hub, one problem, a handful of NPCs. Make them use the home area as a base of operations that they come back to. Get a new problem, head out, come back. Problem, head out. It's really simple. It's a hub. Hub adventures work really well for starting out in Palladium Fantasy, and most fantasy games for that matter. This lets the players get comfortable in the system, lets them understand how dangerous things can be, lets them learn that not every situation needs to be solved with the sword. If you go too big too fast, you're going to kind of lose that whole perspective. The game starts to feel scattered, and you don't want that. You want to keep it tight. NPCs matter a lot in Palladium because NPCs carry a lot of weight. You don't really need dozens of them. You just need a few that feel real. You got to give them a goal, a concern, and a reason to care about what's happening, and that's pretty much enough. You don't need long backstories. You just need a behavior for each of them. How do they react when things go wrong? Do they help? Do they hide? Do they push the party in a direction? Players remember how NPCs act, not how they were described. Chances are they will definitely remember how they act. And that's some of the things that really shape the world. Some things that GMs will miss are consequences don't have to be immediate. Something the party does in one session might not matter until session 5, and that's fine. In fact, that's probably even better. A job they rushed might come back as a problem later. Someone they ignored might be just important. A place they passed through might change because of what they did. You don't need to force that, just keep yourself little notes on the side about it. When it makes sense, bring it back. That's how the world starts to feel connected. If you're new to Palladium Fantasy, here's the best advice I can give you. Ask questions. Really, just ask questions. Don't assume you understand the situation as a player. Ask what you see, ask what you hear, ask what you know, because the more information you have, the better decisions there will be. And the game rewards the decisions more than good stats. One other thing is, I have to say, don't rush. There's no timer pushing you forward unless you choose to engage with one. Take the time to plan, take the time to think things through. Sometimes slowing down is the smartest move you can make, and sometimes it really isn't, but, that's part of the tension. And failure is going to happen. Failure in Palladium is not the end of the game, it's just part of it. You might fail a roll, you might lose a fight, you might make the wrong call, you might get an insanity. Yeah, you never know, right? It doesn't mean the session's over. It means you just shift your perspective. It just means the situation's changed. You just have to adapt to the new situation. And that's where the game gets a little more interesting over time. If everything works all the time, nothing really matters. Failure creates new problems, and those problems create new sessions. Something I want to be very clear about. You do not need to memorize the rules to run this game well. You need to understand the spirit of it. Danger is real, choices are matter, the world reacts. If you hold on to these 3 things, danger is real, choices is matter, the world reacts, you can look up the rest as you go. And your players really won't care all that much because they'll be engaged what's happening and not what page you're on in your book notes. Now, before I wrap up this whole entire thing, I wanted to bring this back to something simple to help you remember. Palladium Fantasy works best when you treat it like a living world, not a series of encounters. Things happen whether the party is there or not. People have goals that don't revolve around the players. Events move forward. When the player steps into that, they're part of something already in motion, and that's what makes it feel real. If you're coming into Palladium Fantasy 2nd Edition for the first time, don't try to master it. Don't try to run it perfectly. Start simple. Put the problem in front of the party, let them make decisions, and then let the world respond. That's the core of the game. It's not about balance, it's not about perfection. It's all about pressure, consequences, and choices that matter. If you lean into that, the system starts to click. And once it clicks, it stays with you. If you're already familiar with Palladium and it never quite worked the way you wanted, try approaching it differently next time. Slow down. Let situations breathe. Stop solving problems for the players. Let them deal with it. That's where the game comes alive. If you want a structured version of what we talked about today, something that you could read, reference, and maybe hand to your players, I'm working on a full primer, and I'll eventually put it up at railgunsanddragons.com, and I'll make an announcement when that happens. You can head over there and check that out when I do announce it. It's going to be probably, I'm up to about, 15, 20 pages. And it's kind of like a primer for 2nd edition. I've never found a primer for 2nd edition, to be honest. There may have been one floating around, but I haven't found it. And Palladium has never done it. They've done primers for Rifts multiple times, but they've never done one for their other popular game, Palladium Fantasy. Now, I know Rifts is their flagship, but this is a Palladium Fantasy podcast. If you want to hear things about Rifts, I can do that, but I figured this is mostly just a fantasy podcast. So that's going to wrap up episode 9. This is the Summoner Circle podcast. I'm Vince. Hope to see you next time. Good luck. God bless.